Due Process, winner of 10 Emmys, including a 2007 Mid-Atlantic Emmy for in-depth reporting.
Men are going like this and women are going like this until you get to the top, and it's all men. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
But just look at this year's law school grads, roughly one half women. So what becomes of equal opportunity? For women in law, is there still a glass ceiling? That's up next on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, supporting informed citizens for an effective democracy. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.
Teacher, secretary, housewife, nurse. Not too long ago, those were the choices for all but very few women. So right through the middle of the 20th century, almost all lawyers were white and male. I'm Raymond Brown, and on this edition of Due Process, Women in the Law. Have they found real equality as their numbers have swelled? Sandra King starts off our look through the so-called glass ceiling.
Raymond, life has changed for all women in the workplace, and lawyers are a dramatic example. As late as the 1960s, they were still a small minority in the law schools and in the law firms. But with the rise of women's rights, the law took on a more balanced look. But what about the balance of power? We can't always believe what we see on TV.
So, you're Shirley Schmidt of Crane Pool and...
Schmidt.
A named partner.
Hi, Shirley Schmidt.
Her legal acumen acknowledged.
Shirley, I want you to think back and tell me who is the best attorney you have ever seen in court.
Me.
Her power undisputed.
How can you come in here and in 1 week fire someone you don't even know?
I'm Schmidt.
But just how real is the fictional Boston Legal? And what can these law school graduates, roughly half of them women, realistically expect?
They shine in law school. So their expectation, I think, is that that's going to continue when they start practicing law.
I don't think that just because I'm a woman or a female that that's in any way going to limit me in terms of what I want to do 10 years from now. It's just, I think, especially going into that atmosphere, everyone has to work hard.
And yet the stats tell a less optimistic story if women's sights are on the upper reaches of those high-end private firms.
You got to be smart. You have to work hard. You have to have a degree of integrity. You have to have a little toughness, and you have to have a lot of judgment. And those are criteria that are, I think, completely neutral. There's no reason that a woman can't achieve those criteria just as a man can.
The people who are running law firms and running the major cases continue to be white men. It's much, much better than things were even 10 or 20 years ago. But the pace of change has been relatively slow. There are many women associates and many fewer women who make junior partner. And of course, at the senior partner level, there are very, very few.
In fact, only 26% of law firm partners are women. And when you look at equity partners, the number drops to only 16%.
Passing of the torch from the boys' club to us.
Well, I'll smoke to that.
As for name partners like Candace Bergen Schmidt, well, in the big firms, they just don't exist.
There are women partners who are equity partners who have major roles in their law firms, but the numbers are very small.
Schmidt is not typical.
No, she is atypical, and I would say it's an aberration in the legal sphere.
Women are often superior lawyers, they're often superior people, and they encounter obstacles in the practice of law that men simply don't.
And that's what led Nancy McDonald to walk away from a 7-year partnership in a large regional firm.
If it's 50-50 coming out of law school, there's no reason why it shouldn't be 50-50 all the way up the chain.
And into her own woman-owned, woman-run, woman-friendly firm.
We want to start building the diversity programs. We want to get to these kids as young as we can get them. You know, all these years we're talking about glass ceiling, glass ceiling. It isn't glass. If it's glass, you can shatter it and get to the top. And for most women lawyers, it just is not glass. It's not there.
The result, the McDonald Law Group, just 6 months old, with 9 lawyers, 5 staff, and all women.
Okay, well, so far I'm not coming in on weekends.
It's not run by men, and I think that's a difference. It's not set up so that you fail or succeed on a certain level. Here, if one person makes it, we're all making it. Everyone works together. If you need help on something, you get help.
And you get the flexibility that women with children often need.
My flexibility is that I spend time in the morning with my kids, get them off to school, try to go to the gym, and then my day will start at about noon.
In most of the larger firms, if you have lawyers that are on part-time, there's somebody standing there going, wasn't she supposed to be here? And how come she's gone already? Wasn't she supposed to be here 5 hours today? We don't have that here.
And here, there's no such thing as male bias or male bosses.
The men that are in control of the firms are reluctant to admit women into their ranks or to give up control, period.
It's still common today for a woman to walk into the room and be the only woman working as a lawyer or the only woman banker or business leader. You know, I have certainly been in court where the only women in the room were the court reporter and me.
Still, there are women who make it big, especially in the public sector.
Please be seated. In the state judiciary in New Jersey, we made a substantial difference, and there are more and more women, and the governor is appointing more and more women as judges.
But it's changing because of consistent advocacy and also because of performance of people who actually get the opportunities. And there are plenty of examples that we can use.
For some of us, we've been able to achieve certain objectives and goals that at one point in time appeared to be unachievable.
Carol Corbin Walker was the first black female partner at a big New Jersey firm and just the 3rd woman to head the state bar.
I think 20 years ago, it was more in your face, like how dare you, if you're a woman, that you think you can achieve this goal. Whereas now, it's more subtle.
I'll do my agenda, Denny. It's to fix things.
But back to Shirley Schmidt. She may not be the model for today's young woman lawyers. No husband, no kids, and no compunction about exercising power. About going bare-knuckled up against the men who work for her.
You will be missed for at least all of 5 minutes.
Or the women.
You're fired, Maddie. You can't call your persuasive lawyer, tell him to add a count for wrongful termination. Bye-bye.
There are still problems that we have yet to work out in various parts of the practice of law, but we've made a lot of progress, so it's a mixed, I would say it's very mixed.
But Deborah Poritz remains the exception, and not just because she's a woman. Unlike the fictional Shirley Schmidt, ruthless, childless, single, Deborah Poritz came late to the law after she had raised her kids and rose nonetheless to the top of the profession. But her success came in government jobs. Raymond, hard to know if she'd gone that far if she'd been on the private side.
Sandy, just one of the questions we're about to explore with some women with some very different views of glass ceiling.
are still issues for women. I don't know whether I'd call it a glass ceiling.
Oh, sure there is. It's cracking as we go along. But I think women, white women and black women and Latin women and Asian women all face some barriers.
We have several firms or women are partners, and the growing numbers of women that are continuing in the profession is significant.
Women and men never will be treated the same, and I think that those of us who do civil rights work have to continue to fight for equal rights for women.
So how to explain the continued imbalance? Is it biology? Is it bias? Are women being held back, or are they making different choices? For some answers, we turn in Newark to Rosemary Alito, an employment law specialist who has seemingly found her way through the glass ceiling. To Myra Terry, women's activist and former president of Now New Jersey. And to Peggy Sheahan Knee, the newly installed president of the New Jersey State Bar Association. Welcome to all of you. Peggy, let me start with you. It's been roughly 20 years since there was parity in law school graduating classes. Why 20 years hence, or as we sit here now, is there still a significant statistical imbalance in terms of partnership and real participation in decision-making in law firms, 17%, 20%, something like that?
Well, Ray, I think the problem relates to the movement up. You start out with somewhat of, hopefully, some equality in the ranks, in the larger law firms, in government positions, and as you move up the ranks, you see a falling off. And you get to the top of the ladder, and there's no one who looks like me.
What produces the falling off? Because it's a pyramid, I suppose, statistically, but why isn't it a rectangle?
Well, I think it's a number of factors. One, I believe, is access to business. One of the clips you showed, there was a discussion of what factors are important in becoming a partner in a large law firm. One of the factors that wasn't mentioned is business. How much business does someone bring to the table? And women have had some difficulties getting access to that business community. And some of it's comfort level. Men feeling more comfortable with men, not necessarily feeling comfortable with a woman sitting in the boardroom with them, making important decisions.
Myra, your analysis?
Yes, we didn't get the vote for 75 years from the time that there was a concerted effort to do that. Now, why is that? 75 years is a very, very long time. That's a lot of Congresses that we had to move through to have that happen. And there was a general feeling about women. Some of it was definitely conscious, and some of it was unconscious. And that was that women were not worthy. I think today no one would say that out loud, but there's a lot of institutionalized sexism, which everybody has, women and men. Women have it and men have it, that somehow says that we're not good enough. I think when you look at the money issues and what the power base is, what you see with the money is that men have an all-boy network. The all-boys network continues to give to the all-boys network. The same thing happens in fundraising. So if you look at women and how they can fundraise and who they are able to bring to the table to their law firms, they're dealing with women. They're dealing with some men, but they don't have the same kinds of connections. And part of the reason they don't have the same connections is because they're not given the same opportunities that there are. And it isn't only about becoming a partner. It's about what Nancy McDonald was talking about, and that is that the decision making, how you make decisions, and who that affects. And if you continue to have men at the top making those decisions, then you're never going to have a family-friendly workplace.
Rosemary, do I sense that you want to get in on this before I ask you another question?
I would. My experience has been totally different from the experience that the two other people are talking about. I've been in several law firms, and my experience in each one has been that it's been a meritocracy, and that there have been no artificial impediments to women rising up through the ranks in those law firms. Now, I'll give us an example. The firm I'm in now, I'm a partner in a global law firm with about 1,500 lawyers across the world. We have women on our management committee, on our executive committee. We have women partners, women administrative partners, and lots of women throughout the firm like me who run practice groups. We've made a very conscious effort as I think most large corporations and most large law firms are doing.
What percentage of the partners in your firm are women?
I don't know what the percentage is, Ray, but...
Do you think your firm is typical in terms of the dynamics you're now describing, or do you think it's atypical?
No, I think it's typical. You know, I'll give us another example. New Jersey's largest law firm had for many years a woman managing partner. Now, no one talks about that. She was managing partner for the state's largest law firm until her retirement last year. The practice of law is very competitive. It's extremely competitive, particularly in the largest law firms that are looking to get the most exciting work. And to be competitive, you have to have the smartest and the hardest working and the best lawyers. And if you are not making use of women lawyers and minority lawyers, then you're losing out on a tremendous talent pool. And I think that most law firms, at least the law firms that are going to succeed in this century, realize that they have to not only not discriminate against women and minorities, but they have to make particular efforts to make sure that they accommodate the needs of women moving forward.
Let me come back to an answer that was supplied earlier. That is, that it seems both Peggy and Myra, you were both implying, I thought, that some or many of the forces that affect the law firm situation are really forces that affect the society at large. Your suggestion, Peggy, that women might not have the same opportunities to generate business would be an issue relating really to their role in society at large. The decision-making dynamic you talked about, Myra, if accurate as a description of the core of this problem, would suggest it's part of a larger problem. Do you think that whatever's happening in law firms is typical of businesses writ large, or is there something special about the universe of law firms in terms of management and in terms of how women are treated?
Women still earn only 77 cents for every dollar that men earn. That's across the board, except in the traditional women's issue.
Let me challenge you on a decision-making, and this may or may not be what you meant, but in terms of women having decision-making and doing it differently, I recall in the last century when people talked about women in politics as probably being different, maybe less bellicose, and yet we had Indira Gandhi, Maggie Thatcher, other women who seemed to be as aggressive and as likely to go to war or be authoritarian as males. And so the question is, do you think in business that the dynamics, the ways in which women make decisions when they get to the top is any different from the way males do?
No, I don't. My experience has been that it was interesting seeing that clip from Boston Legal, because the woman, if you actually analyze the Candice Bergen character, she's very similar to the other male character portrayed in that show. And I think that many women, maybe shaped a little bit by experience, may have a broader view on certain issues, but whenever I have been in a decision-making capacity, and in fact in the state bar realm, women and men think the same way on many issues.
Oh, gee. You need to look at a lot of issues here, and you have to take a look across the board what's really important for women.
Can you pick out the most important one?
Yes. First of all, there's a call to action that came out from the Fortune 500 companies. And the reason the call to action came out was because they wanted to make sure that they were working with vendors who were doing equal opportunity in hiring and retaining women and minorities. And that was 2004, and they're actually challenging law firms and other firms to get on board with that. So they know that there are problems. If there weren't any problems, they wouldn't be doing this kind of a challenge.
Now, Peggy, Rosemary talked about a meritocracy. Is that consistent with the numbers we're seeing of 17% women partners, and by the way, less than 4% minorities defined as Asians, African Americans, and Hispanics?
They couldn't be.
So,
because that would presuppose that the women are not doing as good a job as the men are. And from the statistics and from experience, the women are excellent attorneys. They play important roles in the law firms, but unfortunately, in many times, they may make it to the non-equity partner level. They may not make it to the partner level. And if it was based on meritocracy, I think we'd see a lot more equality. I just wanted to note that I'm a graduate of Fordham Law School, and when I started in 1981, we were the first 50% woman class. The numbers aren't there. I mean, you don't see that many women in those positions.
Rosemary, let me come back to you. You mentioned the largest firm. We don't need to get into the specifics, the name of the firm, but I think they've got 38 out of 180 in terms of women being partners. How is that, and the broad statistical numbers we've been talking about, 17% writ large across the state, how's that consistent with your notion that it's a meritocracy?
Well, I think there are some other factors at play in what decisions people make about their careers. You know, there are a lot of other factors that go into whether someone decides to stay with a law firm and make a law firm their career than whether they're succeeding or not. It is a fact in our society that women are still responsible for most of the caregiving, both of children and of elderly family members. And I think that that impacts seriously a lot of the decisions that women make, very legitimate decisions about how they want to approach their careers.
So let me ask you anecdotally, and then I'd ask Peggy the same question. Is it by and large single women or those without young children who are the ones who are rising to levels of leadership in the law firms?
I think that may have been the case in the past, but I think now that is not true at all. Most of the women in my firm are married with children, but I will say also that in my particular practice group of the firm, most of the female attorneys are on some form of balanced hours, and they're very successful, and they're very some of them very respected and high members of the firm, but the firm has made accommodations to their desire to balance work and life. And I think that those initiatives are very important in going forward, increasing the number of women who are able to make the decision to stay with a private law firm.
Let me come back to something that Larry Lussberg, a male lawyer in the state, said in the Man on the Street interviews we did. Larry said that he doesn't think it's, in fact, he said never, to the question of whether women are going to achieve equality in terms of the workplace and the glass ceiling. Do you agree with that?
No. No, I think that it's...
Can you give us a time frame shorter than never?
Well, my feeling is that in 20 years that we're not going to be discussing this issue. I think women are becoming much more proactive. I discussed this with someone the other day, and I said you have to take an axe to the glass ceiling. Women have to show that. First of all, they have staying power. If you don't get to the point where you want to get, you have to show that you can come back and you can lose gracefully, but that you're going to stick with it. And I think that based upon the numbers of women and men coming out of law school, the society at large in terms of legal society, I don't believe it's never. I just think it should be sooner, but I would suspect in the next 10 to 20 years that you're going to see a tremendous change.
Rosemary, can I assume you disagree with the never?
Yes. Let me give you an example. When I came out of law school...
Needs to be short because I need to give Myra a shot, but go ahead.
Okay. I think it's good now. I think it's going to continue to get better.
Okay. Myra, where are you on never?
I think until law firms and every other firm becomes totally family-friendly for women and for men, so that women can take the same opportunity to be with their families, it will not happen. And one more comment I'd like to make, and that is about our legislature. In New Jersey and everywhere else, what we find is women go into the legislature or run for office because they want to change the world. Men are still making deals, and that's what's happened throughout history. Is men have made deals, and women have made this country and the world a better place. There is the exceptions to the rule are not the rule.
And I take it you are rejecting the never comment of Myra Lussberg. You are more optimistic, or no?
I am not optimistic. I think it took us 75 years to get the vote, and it has been since 1920 since we got the vote. We don't have an equal rights amendment in this country.
Peggy, did I sense you had something you wanted to add?
No, I think that I think it's important for women such as Myra, such as Rosemary and myself, to show leadership and to show that it can be done. And I think a lot of that is there are women who
So your
need
message to young lawyers who are looking to you as the leader of our state bar,
yes,
that they should be optimistic?
Absolutely.
And that if it's 20 years from now and there's not equality, there's going to be a picket line in front of your houses, having given a bad prognostication.
Hopefully I'll be around in 20 years for them to
I'll be on the head of the picket line.
Myra will be heading the picket line. And Rosemary, will you be there?
I'll be there.
Thank you. Well, my thanks to Peggy Knee, to Rosemary Alito up in Newark, and to Myra Terry. That's it for this edition of Due Process, but we'll be here next week and every week, exploring those issues of law and justice you're not likely to find explored elsewhere. For Sandy King and all of us here, I'm Raymond Brown. Thanks for watching.
see more and more women at law firms, and as they move up in the structure of the law firm, they have a greater ability to say something about how these issues should be handled.
I hope that when the women get there, just like when African Americans get there, that they don't shy away from their obligation to reach down, mentor, and help others move up as well.
I think that in government, particularly in the later years, we're seeing a lot more movement upwards, such as I have at the prosecutor's office, or Ann Milgram as our attorney general.
I think things have gotten better, no doubt about it. But it's an ongoing problem, and anybody who wants to wish it away is not being realistic.
Major funding for due process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, supporting informed citizens for an effective democracy. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.
Here, Mike.